ADUs, are they the thing of the future? To hear our thoughts and more, stay tuned to this episode of The Den.
The Den, powered by the Lyons Group, a show dedicated to exploring hot topics in real estate, local happenings, and industry trends. We're a small team of professionals approaching $400 million in sales and nearly 2,000 local transactions. You're listening to time-tested experts and industry leaders. Here's a refreshing look at real estate happenings and more. Welcome to The Den.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of The Den. Today, we're going to be talking about ADUs, which are accessory dwelling units. And we're going to get into that, the ins and outs. Are these the thing of the future? But before I get to that, let me introduce my friends, my partners, my co-hosts, the fellow members of the Lyons Group. To my left, Paul, hand me the rockberry, the boss, Shannon Martinez. And we were missing today Aspen, the Ninja Groen. That was hard to say. You know, when you usually go around the table and Aspen is not with us today, she's going to be missing 2 episodes. The poor thing's on vacation, but we're going to have to do this and grind this out without her, and that's okay.
In sunny Florida.
In sunny Florida.
Not jealous at all.
Yep. Soaking up the white sandy beaches. And you ever been to Pensacola area? The Panhandle? It's beautiful. Yeah. Have you, Shannon?
Yeah, South Beach.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Okay. So you've been to South Beach. Okay. So yeah, the Panhandle and South Beach is a pretty area too. Yeah. So just watch out for jellyfish and sharks.
I've only been to Sarasota when I was a kid.
Oh. Well, let me just tell you, you cross the state line into Florida and you drop to the bottom of the food chain. So that's how that works. So just so you know, there's like never mind. I'll explain it later, Paul. If you
I'm as lost as y'all.
Yeah, that's right. It's all right. That's right. Back on track here. Let's talk about ADUs, which are accessory dwelling units. Paul, this was a topic that you came up with because there's been a lot of talk about ADUs lately, especially with the housing crisis that America is facing. And I think it's a great topic, actually. I really think that we can talk through like some of the ins and outs. And is it a trend that's going to continue? Is this something that we're going to see a lot more of? And for our viewers, we're going to talk a little bit about exactly what an accessory dwelling unit is and in what capacities they can be used. And then we'll take it from there. So Paul, why don't you kick us off? Why don't you talk about what an ADU is and why this topic came up?
Well, I'd like to first apologize if this episode does not go well now that you've blamed me for this topic. I didn't like that at all. Okay. So an accessory dwelling unit is they used to be called in-law suites. So an accessory dwelling unit is another property or another dwelling on your home. They have certain requirements. They have to have a bathroom. They have to have a kitchen. They have to have their own access points. There could be more, but those are the ones I know right now.
Yep. Now,
ADUs, going to what you said on the housing crisis, there was a push earlier this year in the legislative session to allow for ADUs to be put on every property in the state. You know, the thought is we don't have enough housing for all the people that are either homeless or, falling on hard times.
Yeah.
That can't afford it. So an accessory dwelling unit was one of those things where they say, okay, you don't have to leave your property as you age. So they called it aging in place. So your kids can move into the big house and you get the she shed. Now, I don't know how many people would like to do that, but that was kind of the thinking behind that legislation. There was a lot of problems with that legislation. They wanted to get rid of completely single family residences altogether. You couldn't build a single family residence anymore. There's a lot of unintended consequences with doing something like that. And so we worked against that bill. But ADUs, I think, if you have the space on your property, could be a great thing to do. You could, rent them out. You could have a family member move into them. And the planning and zoning for the city of Farmington are very accommodating. If you want to go that route, they will give you a variance. So
in a lot of instances,
unless it's, way too dense and there's no actual access to that property.
Yeah. And I want to go back to what you just said was like, this is pretty mind blowing. I mean, for our viewers to understand, we did an entire episode on the silent war, and the silent war is legislative issues that affect your rights as a property owner. And what Paul just said was pretty profound. Like, there was legislation on the table to get rid of all of single family residential, right? So once you go past single family, you're in multi-unit dwelling. So in other words, you could have a beautiful single family residence, and then right next door, someone could put up a fourplex, which may not be what you want or that neighborhood wants per se. So it was pretty profound that even got to the table. I mean, we see stuff all the time that they try to run through that is just way out there, that would have, like you said, all these unintended consequences. I understand the spirit of trying to create housing that's affordable, right? Trying to create options for the demands that we have. But boy, you pass something like that and single family is gone altogether. Thank goodness you raised the flag and said, hey, what are we doing here, right? And then it became an issue. Then the realtors started fighting it, and I think the fight was already in the works. But this is why you should hug your realtor if you work with your realtor well, because we are on the front lines.
Ask if it's okay first.
Yeah, ask if it's okay. You just don't go around hugging people. Side hug though is fine.
That's right.
Yeah. Back to that. I mean, the legislative component is pretty incredible. So I'm glad that we dodged a big bullet there. But I do think that there's some really good implications of, how ADUs can be used. And Shannon, maybe you can talk a little bit about, what are some of the things that would make sense for a use like that? I mean, Paul alluded to, multi-generational living. Do you think that that's really becoming popular nowadays?
I do. I think especially as housing is becoming more expensive and it's harder to purchase a home, people aren't buying homes while they're young anymore either. So, you consider your children, getting older and wanting to move out. Having an ADU would be nice to have maybe a space for your children, not just your aging parents, but your kids. Also, with it being so hard to afford housing these days, having a property that generates some income for you, whether you just wanted to rent it to, a friend or anybody, traveling nurse or anybody, to generate some income to help make your mortgage payment. I think they're very useful for many reasons these days, not just your aging parents, where traditionally that's what they were. We called them mother-in-law quarters. And they really were for your aging parents. But now it's really for anybody. Generate some income on your property, or your children who just can't afford right out of college or right out of high school to go out and just live on their own anymore.
Yeah. And that's really a great point. We've been very vocal about the difficulty first-time homebuyers are facing versus when we were first-time homebuyers. It was a matter of, do you want to take the risk or not? Are you responsible or not? Now, keep in mind, Paul, I started with a plant and I moved my way up to a goldfish, and I got a dog. You remember my first dog?
I remember your first dog.
And then once I was like, oh, okay, I can keep things alive, then maybe I can be responsible with my finances. From there, it worked its way into purchasing a property. The baby steps. So, but I think that, for us, it was a matter of like, do you take those steps? Can you take those steps and buy a house? Now it's like, I want to take those steps as a first-time home buyer, but the affordability factor is off the chart. Like, it really is difficult for first-time home buyers, and hopefully that changes, to some degree. But an ADU allows for that versatility where you have parents that maybe have some kids that haven't, what do they call that movie, failure to launch? Well, it's, yeah. So you have,
or even your unruly teen, you kick them out into the ADU.
There you go. But it may give them some opportunity to have some freedom, but also get themselves in a position where they can eventually purchase because they're not breaking the bank with rent and whatnot. But I think your point too, as well as multi-generational living, is the potential to have some extra income, right? Because we're all looking at retirement someday, hopefully, and that's a big opportunity to use what you have for additional income. Now, they come in all shapes and sizes, but why don't you give our listeners some indication of what ADUs could look like? Paul, you want to start with that?
Well, they could be attached or detached. I think that access point and its own driveway or parking spaces is one of the requirements. They could be, usually they're about 1 bed, 1 bath. I was in a beautiful one the last weekend, and it was like a perfect ski lodge type thing. Had a little kitchen, living area, 1 bath, two bath, because there's one upstairs, and then a loft master bedroom with a spiral staircase. It was really cool. So they are also converted detached garages. I mean, it could be anything really.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've seen them on the side of garages quite a bit.
Yeah. We own an investment property. We have a main house, and they had a detached garage, and we converted that to a studio apartment. And I mean, the thing has been rented steady for 15 years at this point. I mean, it's a great addition that we've had. And it was down here near the downtown because it was a mixed use, right? And really kind of the downtown area was, don't even go with any stories, Paul. I've had some interesting stories over the years with that rental. But
all I got to do is smirk at him.
Yeah, I know. I know what you're thinking. But the city had allocated this downtown area to what we call a mixed use. And a mixed use is where you could have the multifamily dwelling, or you could potentially have a little home that turns into a commercial building, like an attorney or an accountant or counseling services or something to that effect. And so that mixed use was pretty cool because they allocated this whole downtown area to that and allowed us to do an apartment in the back that was a detached garage. So I think we're probably going to see some more of that. I mean, I think that the regulatory environment is changing quite a bit, where we're going to see municipalities especially pushing for those, because once you get out into the county, it's a little more willy-nilly. Wouldn't you agree, Shannon? Mm-hmm. I mean, they don't have as many restrictions. And a lot of people that buy out in the county understand and expect that there's not, there's not as many overlays there. So, and the opportunity is great in the county to be able to, you've got a little more acreage typically when you buy in the county, and you have the potential, but then you start falling into infrastructure issues, because you're going to have to run that extra power to that detached building.
Yeah, septic requirements and
septic and water and things like that. I actually have 2 listings right now that both have a lower level living quarters. They're basically both ADUs. One has a, like you said, a 1 bedroom, 1 bath apartment. It's like an efficiency apartment, and it has its own entrance and exit. And the other one is really kind of 2 houses stacked on top of each other. You have a full driveway and a garage, 3 bedrooms, 3 baths on the upper level. You have a lower level garage with 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, and its own laundry facilities on the lower level, laundry facilities on the upper level. In fact, I just showed it 2 days ago to a family where it was multi-generational. It was a brother and sister and their mother, and they're getting up there in their years. And the mother and the daughter wanted to live together, and the son wanted his own space. And so it kind of worked out. It's really a property that checked a lot of their boxes. I think we're going to see a lot more of that. The bigger cities are used to this, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, you see where this really comes from urban areas, really pushed ADUs originally. So you want to expand it upon any more of the affordable housing solutions or anything like that you're seeing legislatively?
Single family residence is low density. Then anything that's under 4 is kind of medium density. These ADUs would fall under a medium density. And then you have high density, which are like apartment buildings or those types of things. The state is really pushing for more medium and high density development. And I know of a few projects in town that are trying to get underway, but that higher density stuff and low income. So those are the things that are being pushed at the moment. There's the MFA. It's not MFA anymore. It's, what's it called? They changed it. It's no more.
The Housing Authority?
Yeah. But it's not that anymore.
The MFA is
something else.
Yeah, something else.
Anyway, they have they're going to have a town hall style event here. I think it's next week or the week after down in Santa Fe. And try to get info from all over the state on what we should be doing. So I think it would be a good thing, if anybody's watching this, to get out there and let them know how they should spend the obscene amount of money that they were given this year. So
yeah,
they're trying to spend it all.
Yeah. And in typical government fashion, right? They go with a program and then they just kind of throw out a whole bunch of money and
whoever's got their ear gets the projects. So you got to get out there and speak loudly to them.
Yeah. What about financing issues? You think there'll be any financing issues, Shannon, to ADUs and how those work?
Well, you're asking the wrong person on that, because I was just asking Paul earlier that and trying to talk to a couple of lenders. It used to be a bit of an issue. I know I'd had some issues in the past, but I think now it's becoming more normal. I think now, having an ADU is not going to stand in the way of your typical mortgage on your house.
Yeah. As long as it's not over, 4 units or so.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah.
Just having one extra unit, just having a house with one extra dwelling on it is probably not going to hinder any of your financing.
Well, and we had a deal a couple of years ago where they wouldn't, this was we actually have had 2. One was a full ADU, had everything, the kitchen, its own access points, all the things that we've been talking about. The other one didn't have a kitchen. Mm-hmm. Now, both of them were knocked off the appraisal.
Yeah.
Neither one of them got counted. So that was only a few years back. Now, all you got to do is, as soon as you hand a contract to the lender, you go, ADU, there's an ADU on this one. And they take over and, do the appropriate things. Because I know there's a lot of paperwork. Because even like the government loans, because it used to be really hard for people for lenders to sell on the secondary market, to the big bundlers and all that kind of stuff. Now it's getting a lot easier. It's more accepted. They have a huge paperwork packet that they do. It's like another mortgage that they do for when they sell it off.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I was just thinking about those instances where, I was having conversations with the appraiser because they're like, we can't count this. And I'm like, what do you mean you can't count it? It's a fully contained unit. It's got its own kitchen. It's fully finished. It's heating. It's cooling. It's got its own power. In fact,
it's even fenced off.
Yeah, it was fenced off. I mean, it was pretty shocking. And the response from the appraiser was, well, it's not connected to the house, so I can't treat it as. So that was a real problem. Right. We had a unit that was, I'm thinking of one that was actually separated from the house that was maybe 20 yards behind it. Mm-hmm. And she actually used it she was a massage therapist isn't the right word anymore. Is that what it's called?
That's what it's called.
Oh, okay, good.
I believe so.
Yeah, because we used to call it masseuses. It's not the proper term.
Why are you bringing this one up?
I don't know, Paul. But anyways, she was a massage therapist, and she had the unit in the back. That's what she used. Her clients would come in, they do the massage, and she was very successful at that. Now, anyone could have moved into it and used it, and I think they did use it as a rental for a while. But when we sold that property for them, the appraiser gave us a ton of pushback, and I think that's changing now. So, you're saying, with the lending regulations, they're starting to be more acceptable of.
I just closed the one that was no problem whatsoever. Went through inspections, appraisal, everything. I have another one going right now that has been no problem whatsoever.
Was that conventional financing on that last one that you closed?
FHA was the one we closed.
It was an FHA loan. Mm-hmm. So that's huge. So again, for our viewers, FHA is a conforming loan. We have conventional conforming, FHA conforming, a lot of different types. But what that means is that those loans have to fit within a specific box. And those boxes, especially with FHA and VA, are very particular. And so to hear that an FHA closed that is pretty encouraging. It's nice to know. So let's talk a little bit about trends. Do you think this is something that we're going to see become more of a thing that we're going to deal with down the road? Or is this kind of a fad? Is this something that's just kind of putting a Band-Aid on the housing situation? What are your thoughts there, Shannon?
I think we're going to see a lot more of it. I think as housing prices go up, and I think, obviously, you only have so much land to build on. Not that we don't have a lot more room, but like you said, you've got infrastructure issues. So starting an entire new neighborhood or development is a lot more than just adding a unit to, an area, a house that already has all the infrastructure. I think we're going to see a lot more of that. I think it helps relieve the housing crisis. I think it helps take some of the pressure off, the more that we have in place. And I think that people are finding it more acceptable. Banks, lenders are finding it more acceptable, and people are more open to the fact of having that second unit on their property. And they're not even worried if their neighbors have a second unit on their property. Like it used to be a bigger deal. I think we're going to see more of it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, and some of the design qualities have come a long way, especially with the split units. I mean, you can install a pretty affordable split unit for heating and cooling, and it's basically a box that sits up on your wall, and you have a refrigerated and forced air furnace kind of thing. And the big cities are used to that, right? In fact, I was talking to a guy that I showed that home to just 2 days ago, and he said, "Oh, well, I lived in Japan, and this was in every unit. I mean, every unit had a split unit, and that was just the way of life." But I think we're going to see more of that. And I'm thinking back to Coronado Island. Have you two been to Coronado Island?
No.
In San Diego area? Beautiful area.
For different reasons than you did.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're doing, you had sand in your face and
it was weird.
Boots on and cold. And but I was there. Sunbathing and driving around a little golf cart. So
good for you.
I know it's terrible. But what I noticed was, and this was many years ago, I want to say 15 plus years ago, we were there, and every house almost had like a second, like what they would call a carriage house behind it, where you had a garage and then a house above it. And I think that was largely due to just there was a restriction of land. The values had gone through the roof. So they were taking advantage of every aspect that they could for the housing. And rightfully so, because you could bring those, you could rent that carriage house out and pay a chunk of your mortgage, and it was like a commonplace.
Yeah, it's very common back in the New England area too, where I grew up. You'd have the detached garage and an apartment upstairs. Usually it was the drunk uncle that was living up there, though, so you can keep an eye on him.
Make sure to clean the stairs so it didn't fall down the stairs. And we're seeing a lot, like, down in Phoenix area, we're seeing a lot of commercial developments with the residential above it. So they're doing, multi-use in situations like that. It's a little bit different than an ADU, but.
No, I think out in the county, I agree with you. Putting, multiple dwelling units on a property is fine. What we were talking about in that legislation, just to bring up why we were so against it, it was if you lived in an HOA, any of the rules in that HOA are gone. If you had covenants that said you couldn't, those covenants are gone. So it was very, if you buy in a certain area because of how the neighborhood's structured, the density, all of those types of things, all of that could go out the window. And then the unintended consequences are, say you put an ADU on a house that's in town, your parking has gotten bigger. The sewer lines are getting extra usage. The water is not, it may or may not be enough. So to start packing them in on every lot, we're already parking in the streets, and good thing it doesn't snow around here, because plows, you'd never get the streets plowed.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things, Ruidoso with their golf clubs, the country clubs and all that kind of stuff. If you had covenants in a country club, that's all gone. You could put ADUs on your country club too. So that law was just bad from the start.
It's really intrusive.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. So basically, if that law would have passed, it supersedes all of a sudden all your intention as an owner.
Yeah.
To buy in a single family residence area or
in a country club or
a place where covenants, where you want to enjoy your little plot of land peacefully and quietly. Now all of a sudden, that goes out the window. That's the power of legislation. And that's why realtors are really involved with that. And we'll do another episode on, the silent war, but there is constant legislation that is not thought through. I mean, imagine that. Our government doing something and then going, a law's passed. How do we enforce it, or what do we do with it? And then, everyone that's living there has to just kind of scramble to make it work.
It's like any part of politics, though. I mean, you have to have two sides. And even us as realtors, we will argue on one of these issues from two different angles. And it's good to have these conversations to talk it out. And I would say anybody that's having political conversations, talk it out so you can figure out the perspectives from both sides, because we don't agree on everything as realtors either. But once we pick a lane, then then we're stuck with it.
Yeah.
Or not stuck with it, but then we defend that.
We defend it. Yeah. And I think that's really one of those things that's lost right now is just the conversations, because even within our group, we have different opinions about things, and that's wonderful, right? It would stink if we all thought the same way. But I love the fact that we can all sit down and talk about it and try to, you look from my angle, I look from your angle, and, we may at the end of the day agree to disagree, and that's totally fine. But we had a productive, constructive conversation. I think that's missing in our communities and across the nation right now. But we don't want to get into that. Let's not get into that. I'm going to jump into the speed round. We've got to wrap this conversation up. And Shannon, I'll kick it off with you. But do you think ADUs are the answer to the housing crisis? Because we're still, housing crisis kind of fell away, the word, but we're still kind of in that, especially with, pretty open borders. We've had 20 plus million people cross the borders. That puts a lot of demand on our housing. So do you think ADUs are the answer? Or if not, what is the answer?
I think they're part of the answer. I don't think it's going to completely solve the issue, but I do think it takes the pressure off. Yeah. I think it can be a great addition to a home and really help the homeowners and help the housing crisis at the same time.
Give some versatility to it.
Yeah.
But would you agree that it would be nice to have some limitations to the ADUs?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's a smart thing to do. Paul, what are your thoughts there? Do you think ADUs are the answer to the housing crisis that we are facing today and will continue to face for many years?
I don't think that they are the answer. They could be a part of the problem. It's kind of like when you talk about energy and, renewable energy. That is a supplement to what the answer needs to be. I think a lot of it is, like, take New Mexico, for example. How much of this state is actually occupied? We have so much, either federal land, state land, only what's the numbers here? 6% of this county is privately
held. That's it.
Yeah. So, a lot of it could be, let us expand a little bit, because a lot of places, urban areas that get all this influx of the immigrants you were just talking about, they build up. We can't build up here. Does anybody know why?
No. Why?
The fire department ladders don't reach more than the fourth floor.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I didn't think about that.
That's why there's nothing more than the hospital has it, but they have a special sprinkler system in there.
Sure.
But that's how rural we are. We can't, if we bought bigger ladders, we might be able to build higher.
Sure.
So I don't think it is the answer. I think there's a lot of different things that we can do. Legislation that needs to be passed to allow us to do more things. And then we as a community, there was a project to have some, medium density, like fourplexes put in, just outside of a higher end neighborhood. And they all went, and when there was that public notification that it says, we're going to have a hearing, and if you don't want this, they came out in droves and didn't want it. But then at the same time, they'll be the ones to say, we need more housing. We need to get the homeless off the streets. Like,
we had an opportunity.
What exactly are we doing here?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great answer. Thank you for that. And I'll round it out. I do think ADUs are part of the solution to the housing crisis that we're facing. I don't know if I like using that word, but the demand, the over demand that we have on our system right now. And I think ADUs is one part of the solution. I agree with Paul on this. I think that there's a lot of other solutions. Have you seen the Lego houses? Pretty much where they almost have like 3D printers that come out and put those things up. So I think as the years go on, we're going to see a lot more like that. You sacrifice some quality, but all of a sudden now you have some really affordable housing, and it may serve a need. So we'll probably have a whole podcast topic on specifically that, the new construction that's happening and how they're knocking some of these homes out in like a day. But I think there's a multi-pronged solution there to help with the demand, to help keep things a little more affordable, because as you know, just basic economics, the higher the demand and the lower the supply pushes prices up. So we want to make things affordable again for first-time home buyers. But thank you for listening to this episode of The Den. We've had a great conversation. If you would like to schedule a consultation with any one of us at the Lyons Group, go to sjcbroker.com. You can get all of our information. You can schedule a private consultation, whether you're buyer or seller. commercial or residential, we'd love to sit down with you and give some thoughts and knowledge and insight to today's market and how we can help take you to the next level. Go and like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We push out great content there, and the Facebook. We've got TikTok. Paul's a TikTok expert. I got to tell him, all the time to just tone it down a little bit. But one of these days he's going to go super, super viral. But thank you for listening to this episode of The Den. Until next time, we'll see you then.
Thank you for listening to The Den, powered by the Lyons Group. Hit the subscribe button to keep informed on real estate happenings. If you'd like to learn more about the Lyons Group, visit sjcbroker.com. Complex markets require complex strategies. The Lyons Group can give you a true advantage in any market. Whether you're buying or selling, residential or commercial, contact us directly at sjcbroker.com. We're time-tested experts with a client-first approach, and we'll see you next time in The Den.